The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. It's Monday. I apologize that we were not here on Friday. We had scheduled to do a show on Friday, and because, as all of you know, I'm a mom and I am the mom of a child on the autism spectrum, and right before I was leaving, my child hit his head and mom could not be here. It happens, you know, and I want you guys to know that sometimes that just happens. Just like in your household, I have, you know, things happen. But we're here today and we're going to be with you live for the next 2 hours talking about autism from a 360-degree perspective, about how all of us can be more efficient, more effective working with our kids. It's a subject very near and dear to my heart because I am a parent of a child on the spectrum. And we hope that you guys wrote in a lot of questions over the weekend, and I hope that we get to a lot of those today and that we shed some light for you on directions in which you can go. You know, a big part of this journey is getting hooked up to information, and the right information, because all of our kids are different, right? And we live in different places and our kids are starting at different times. So I wish there was just the one size fits all. Here's what you do. Here's step A, and then here's step B. And when you follow this path, then, you know, you'll have no trouble whatsoever. It doesn't really work that way with autism, but there are a lot of things that we can say, well, if P, then Q, then start with this A, right? And we like to hook you up to those answers and to the experts and the information that's going to help you to be more efficient, more effective if you've got a child that you're working with on the autism spectrum, or if you yourself are on the autism spectrum and you're wanting to get hooked up to help and support. It's a vast, vast community. All of us who are here with shared common interests, right? But we all have different needs, which fits in really great with what we're going to be talking about today. I'm very excited about that. So a couple of things that I want you to be mindful of as we start the show here. This show is fully interactive. At least that's what it's meant to be. Emily's going to show you some of the myriads of different ways that you can get in contact with us here. You don't have to be a skywriter to get in touch with us. There are lots of ways to get a message to us. And one of the most exciting ways is if you go to www.autism-live.com. Now, you will see that some version of the show plays there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It is only live approximately 10 hours a week because we do shows when possible. I keep thinking about Friday. When possible, when mom can be here, we do shows Monday through Friday from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. The translation for that on the Pacific Coast is 10 a.m. to noon. And of course, you have to do the math wherever you are in the world. We are seen in 103 different countries now. So everybody has, not only are we on different journeys, we're on different time zones. That's okay. We do the math, right? Si se puede. We can do this. But in any case, when you're watching us live, you have the opportunity to interact with us in real time. You see that white box there on autism-live.com? You can just type there. You don't have to log in. Nobody's asking for a credit card number. Nobody's even asking for your address or your phone number, or, you know, requiring you to sign up for our mailing list. If you want to be on our mailing list, and we have a mailing list and you can get a newsletter, do that on our Facebook page. But when you want information, we don't think that you should have to go through all that. Isn't that great? Now, we've been leaving that open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so you can ask a question whenever. It's just that we can only respond live on the air during those times that we're live. Makes sense, right? But I hope that you guys will continue to. I'm loving that you guys are writing in during the weekend and sharing, because then we, have some new topics. And we really, I know I say it all the time on the show, but we really live to hear from you. The show is designed to be about what you want it to be about. And so don't feel like you're bothering anybody here. We appreciate it when you interact with us. Okay, so having said all that, and I've already told you that I'm not an expert in autism. I'm an autism mom, former teacher, and I have a real passion for this subject because my son, who was diagnosed at the age of 2.5, he's about to be 10 in a little less than 2 weeks. I can't even believe it. And I got so much help along the way. And, I can't even imagine where we would be had we not. I mentioned this on Thursday, that today, for anybody who blogs or uses Facebook or Twitter, there are a group of bloggers who've gotten together and said, let's show some blog love today for Mikaela Lynch's family. And of course, you probably heard about Mikaela Lynch. If you don't know the name, she's the 9-year-old little girl in Clear Lake, California, who went missing on Mother's Day. And unfortunately, they found her deceased last Wednesday. And this is a devastating thing when our kids elope and when we can't keep them safe. But it's an important issue for all of us to be talking about, and to realize that there is help and hope for kids who elope, but you have to ask for help. We can't be expecting parents who are overwhelmed and overtired to know what to do for elopement. That's just not a realistic thing. So we've posted a blog about it today, and I hope that all of you will show a little bit of love in some way to this poor family and spread the word, because there are other families who are out there who have children who elope who have not been hooked up with help. And if you spread the word, maybe someone will hear and get help and support for their eloping child. And maybe someone who doesn't have an eloping child will make a decision to support an autism organization or service or charity that gives support to those families that are having elopement issues. We know that elopement is something that we can address very positively, and that we can, in the meantime, keep a child safe. But having the unrealistic expectation that parents are supposed to be able to sleep with their eyes propped open at all times and be continually vigilant for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we know it doesn't work. We know that it doesn't, and children die every year. So I hope that first and foremost you'll show some love for this family and at least keep them in your thoughts and prayers, and if possible to share that message of what elopement is, that it's very realistic. There are studies that say over 50% of kids on the autism spectrum will elope at some point. And so understanding what it is and then getting help to make sure that that doesn't happen to more children. Absolutely devastating. Okay, but aside from that, we like to start every morning with something that we hope will help us on our journey to understand, and our we call it the jargon of the day. I'll spit it out eventually. The abadabada, where we take one word, one phrase, one acronym, and we try to make sense of it so that we will understand when somebody uses these terms, when they're referring to us and when they're referring to our children. All right, our term today, it's a great one for today. It's perspective taking. Now, this is a term that I had never heard until my child was diagnosed on the spectrum. And yet, when you stop and think about it, and we've heard Dr. Dorian Krampachet say before that this is the key to success, whether it's personal success or world peace. This is the key to success. So it's pretty big, right? A big, big concept. Let's take a look at what we're talking about. Our actual definition for perspective taking is the ability to perceive someone else's thoughts, feelings, and motivations. And I kind of shortened it because it's not only the ability to perceive them, but also to act on that knowledge, that ability to empathize with somebody else. And so our working definition is being able to see things from someone else's point of view. Now, we know that for our kids on the autism spectrum, this skill is sometimes missing or severely hampered. That we will see behavior in a child where they just don't get it. They'll, maybe somebody in their class has fallen and hurt their leg and is bleeding, and everybody else is showing concern, but a child on the spectrum may or may not, right? Because some kids are in there on the spectrum and they're overly concerned, but some kids will laugh inappropriately and don't understand what the issue is or completely ignore it. There's an emergency happening, but the emergency isn't happening for them. And so they don't realize. If it's not happening inside them, they don't realize. This has huge, huge effects on them socially. We know that even neurotypical children, there's a time, and we're finding out it's younger and younger, but there's a time when a baby is connected to its mom, right? Or its caregiver, and it doesn't understand that what it's feeling, the caregiver isn't feeling. But very early on, children start to separate themselves and realize, okay, what I'm feeling isn't what this person is feeling. And in our children on the spectrum, this can often be a phase that they miss, or, like I said, is greatly hampered. We can teach perspective taking to pretty much anybody. There is a very specific process that helps to build that muscle so that people can take perspective. Now, here's the interesting thing about this. Because so many of our kids have difficulty with perspective taking, more and more in social groups and in ABA therapy, we're teaching perspective taking with great success. The problem is that we're not doing enough on the flip. This is where autism awareness really comes into play for me, is that so many people, we see this on a daily basis, do not take the perspective of our children. They don't stop to be able to think it through from their point of view. And so as a result, we get bullying or people who disregard or poo-poo or think it's no big deal because our kids don't look like they have a disability. They look like they're perfectly capable of doing anything, but there are too often people don't stop and think. They just don't stop and think. I had this happen very recently, that an individual that I love and respect who isn't able to take my child's perspective was engaging in a behavior that my son was trying very, very hard to understand. And there was a little bit of very good-natured teasing, you understand. But my son is at a point where he can pick up enough cues that he understood that something was happening. He just couldn't figure out what was happening. And it was because he was kind of being teased. There was a comment that was being made about, oh, you don't want to do this. And he was saying, what? What don't I want to do? And it was more, the person was teasing me about something, but they were saying this to my son and thinking that that he was going to be like, I don't understand what you're talking about, and walk away. But because we've been asking him to pick up on social cues, it was a little bit of torture for him. And I kind of wanted to, very nicely smack the other person in the head and go, would you please take his perspective for a second and consider that he's a child who has social anxiety and social problems, and he's desperately trying to figure out what you're getting at, but you're deliberately being duplicitous because you think it's hilarious. Guess what? It's not hilarious. And I myself have had problems taking my child's perspective from time to time. I've told the story about him, me saying to him, when you get out of the car, you have to do it in this way, and you have to do that. And he said, why? Why do I have to do it that way? And I said, because I need you to do it that way. And he said, but I don't need to do it that way. It's easier for me to do it. Mom, do you have autism? Right? Smart aleck. But for me, and I wasn't taking into consideration, for him, there's a process getting out of the car too, and it's different than mine. It doesn't make it right or wrong as long as everybody's safe. But if I'm asking him to take my perspective, then I at least have to take his. So I encourage you, if you're on the spectrum or you're working with someone on the spectrum, to work on these skills, but don't just work on them with the individual on the spectrum, work on them for yourself as well. This is what we need to do, is take their perspective. What is it like being them? What is it like? What are their sensory issues? You know, all those years ago when they made men put on the pregnancy belly so they could feel what it was like for the woman, I have heard of people doing different sensory things to teachers for a day, where they take and wrap their fingers so that they can't quite touch things the way they would have, and ask them to hold a pencil, and they turn the lights up really bright and make them flicker a little bit, and a whole bunch of sensory things, and ask the teachers to sit and learn so that they get to take the perspective of the kids. I think it's a fascinating idea, one that we could all sort of benefit from. Okay, so that's our jargon for the day. Moving on to our question of the day. Our question today is, what is your if you have a child that you're working with on the spectrum, we'll talk about that later on in the week, but what is your strongest social skill? What are you good at? What part of the social strata do you go, okay, this I have under control? My husband will tell you that I can start a conversation with anyone. I am not afraid to walk up to a total stranger and start talking to them about anything under the sun. This I can do. Don't ask me to end the conversation. Emily will tell you I don't know how to stop talking, but I can start any conversation, and that's a plus, right? I am working on ending conversations. Not so good at it. They have to give me a visual visual schedule. Literally, my husband did that for me last night. But what is your strongest social skill? We're anxious to hear about what that is. We'll be checking in on Facebook a little bit later. All right, we always have a topic of the week. Can you guess what it is already? Yes, wait for it. Social skills. Very important for all of us, and very important that we get to these skills as early as we possibly can with our children. It is so important that we not think that for our kids on the spectrum that the autism outgrow fairy is just going to come in the night and bonk them on the head, and they're just going to get these things. I love the example of when Seth Green was on Conan O'Brien, and he was promoting the movie that we love, The Story of Luke, and he was showing a clip from the movie. If you haven't seen this movie, you really need to get it. It's on Amazon, and I think it's on Netflix too. And there's a moment when Seth Green is describing to another character who's on the spectrum the whole mating dance that happens at the water cooler in the office. And he says, look how, she looks at him for a second, but then she looks down, and then she plays with her hair. And look at how he makes eye contact just long enough to show her that he's interested, but not long enough to make her think that she's being stalked. And he goes on and on and on, lists like 50 things that happen in a 3-second encounter at the water cooler that lead to romance. And he turns and he says to the young man with Asperger's, and this is what you need to learn if you want to hook up in life. So they show the clip, and they come back from the clip, and Conan says, man, where were you when I was in high school? I need this. We all do, to a certain extent. And it's really important that we not poo-poo these skills, and that we make sure that our kids have lots of opportunity to have to be able to practice them in safe settings so that they're more comfortable. Really, really super duper important. So we're going to be talking about that all week long. Some of the many things that we're going to be talking about today, we have our very special guest who's going to be joining us here in the studio in just a minute, Monica Holloway, author of the fabulous book Cowboy and Wills. We have a new A-word episode that we're going to be showing to you today, and I think we're also going to be airing for the first time a new Mission Possible video today. And then a little bit later, really looking forward to it, we have our stress tip of the week. I'll tell you what, I'm always very excited on Monday to do the stress tip of the week, because then I have to I have to think about reducing my stress, which is, it's important for all of us. We have to reduce and manage our stress. It's a real thing. So all of this and more, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to be joined by Monica Holloway. But don't forget, you guys have been writing in, and we're going to continue to answer your questions throughout the day. So stick with us. Back with Monica Holloway.
The Institute for Behavioral Training provides programs to educate students, parents, and professionals proven techniques using applied behavior analysis. Access online video lessons with IBT e-learning. Get one-on-one personalized instruction with IBT face-to-face training. Acquire professional guidance with IBT BCBA supervision. Develop professional growth with IBT continuing education courses. Get access to IBT services today. IBT, 360 degrees of ABA training.
I lied. We're not coming back to Monica Holloway. We're coming back to stress. This is what I know about the schedule. In any case, I'm always excited on Monday to talk about stress because Monday is supposedly statistically the most stressful day of the week. We've had some time off, but there's this expectation as the week starts that there are new things. And of course, for people in the autism world, Saturday and Sunday aren't necessarily days off. Sometimes they're the day without services, which is not always the happy, right? Recently, I had the opportunity to watch the movie The Best Marigold Hotel, right? The best ever Marigold Hotel. I even tried to write it down and I didn't get it right. In any case, there's a great quote in the movie, and I'm going to paraphrase it slightly, but there is a character in the movie who says it's all going to be all right in the end. And if it's not all right now, then it's definitely not the end. Because talk about perspective taking. If we take the perspective that it all works out in the end and that stuff is going to happen, because it's unrealistic to believe anything otherwise. Stuff is going to happen. Negative stuff is going to happen. Bad stuff is going to happen. But if we take the attitude that it's all going to be all right in the end, and if it's not all right now, it's definitely not the end. I look at different things in my life that have gone okay, and things that have gone really well, and things that have not gone well at all, right? That I go, why can't I put this together? But the thing that, and when I look at other people's lives too, and the advice that I took early on was, keep moving no matter what, right? It's the whole reason why they're making another Finding Nemo movie following Dory, because we all say to ourselves, just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. You might be overwhelmed today with all the things that you have to do, but the truth of the matter is if you sit and get in the overwhelm of it, then your stress goes up and your ability to perform well decreases. We don't want that, right? So instead, think to yourself, what can I do right now? Is there something that's within my control right now? If you're sitting in the spot saying, things are definitely not all right now, what's within your control? What can you possibly do in this moment, realistically? Not over the next 5 weeks, but what can you do in this moment? We've talked before about fear and how fear can immobilize us all, or worse, it can cause stress so that we're moving manically, right? But if we take action and are talking to ourselves, using self-talk, saying it's all going to be okay, but I just need to keep moving. And if it's not okay right now, it's definitely not the end. There were so many times on this journey where I would turn to my husband and say, do you believe this? I just don't even know what to do. And there were probably a couple of moments when I thought, okay, this might be it. We might be cooked. We might be done. We're not going to get any further than this. Those moments lasted for a mere second because I remembered the advice that people give on a regular basis. Set your mind on the fact that there is a way over, under, around this obstacle, and that the obstacle is going to be there, and don't waste time going, look at that obstacle. We have this obstacle sitting here. You're going to do that a little bit, but get in the mindset of what do we do? Because it will be all right in the end. And the times that I have been able to remember that in the most stressful moments have been the most joyous, because when you remember, okay, this is happening. I see this is happening, but it's all going to be okay. It really is going to be okay. I know for sure that it's going to be okay. Then you can get down to the work. You can get down to the thing that's going to move the dial a little bit at a time. So I share that with you today, and I share that with myself. If it's not okay now, it's definitely not the end. So keep swimming in the meantime. There we go. Our two movie quotes put together. All right, we're going to take a break, and we are going to come back and answer some of the questions that you guys wrote in over the weekend. So stick with us.
Torin. There's the two buddies.
I have a 7-year-old son who was diagnosed when he was 22 months old with PDD-NOS. That diagnosis was changed when he was 3 to a full autism diagnosis. There was a long period of time where he didn't sleep at all, and all night long would bang his head and whoop. It was because he was in pain but couldn't tell us.
We're going to back up, showing the speed and grace of this guy.
CARD was one of the only programs that said it doesn't really have to be this way forever. Your child will make progress. We can show you. Just give us time. We started services with CARD when my son was 3.5. Shortly thereafter, my daughter was also diagnosed and started her immediately with services. And I'm pleased to say that I think she's doing exceptionally well and will probably lose her diagnosis in the next 2 years. We started with 3 therapists with my son, and he had actually a 46-hour program. And thankfully, through some of the behavioral training that CARD helped us with, he is back in school.
1 + 9 = woohoo!
He's sleeping at night. CARD has a very robust program. Things that we're working on right now that we could never work on before is learning to play the piano, learning to ride his bike. It just has given us back our quality of life. They focus on our family. What do we need to do to make it more functional? So we're very, very happy with the services, and we feel like we owe everything to CARD because they kind of gave us back our life. I have nothing but love for CARD, for sure.
Welcome back. So that was Mission Possible, and we will have the mom and the dad, Tom and Carrie, on the show via Skype tomorrow. So that will be very exciting. And if you have questions for them about what happened with their children, you will have the opportunity to do that. That will be at the bottom of the first hour of the show tomorrow. So 1:30 Eastern Time, 10:30 here Pacific Time. So I hope that you'll tune in for that. And of course, there are many Mission Possible videos. They're videos that just showcase different families and their experience that they've had and what's possible, because that's what it's all about, right? I wanted to take a couple of seconds to talk about some questions that you guys wrote in here. One that came in, I think, on Friday. I'm a new viewer, and I wonder if you could share some information or if you've talked recently about suggestions for making the transition to a summer schedule for children with autism, and if you have any suggestions about things parents might do themselves who don't live in your area and don't live in metropolitan areas that have summer camps and programs. Thank you. Love this question. And it was exactly what we were slated to talk about on Friday, so I'm thrilled to have an opportunity to talk about that. Yeah, if you live someplace where, let's start with the first question, which is transitioning to a summer schedule. And some of the advice that we got from our experts that were on last week, they talked about making sure that you don't cold turkey, right? I think so much of the time when school is out, there's a relief on the part of the parents. We go, I just want to take a day, right? Well, I'm not saying don't take a day, but don't let it turn into a week, right? Because if you change the schedule really quickly on your children, you may see a backlash. It may be that your child doesn't respond well to change, and although you're thinking, wow, this is great because you've got some free time to yourself, But for them, having a structure and knowing what's going to come next is comforting, so that you'll get some challenging behavior that comes in. Or your child might just be absolutely thrilled to have the break and not having challenging behavior as a result of it. But when you try to flip back to a schedule where you're getting something done, you're going to get the pushback there. So either way, we want to be really gentle with the changes to the schedule. Whether it's that, honestly, we do this now on the weekends. We let him sleep a little bit later, and we don't put heavier demands on. But usually we are still out of the house on Saturday and Sunday by 9 o'clock in the morning. And that's our personal preference, and maybe that's not your personal preference, but I think, making sure that, we don't set our kids up for a circumstance where they think, okay, this is the new norm, where I don't have to do things and I'm not responsible for things. That can be really, really dangerous. So gently, I've used the example before of when time changes, that how we have a reaction. I really noticed it this year more than any other year, that when we set the clock back or forward, everybody's a little messed up for a week, right? Because we changed the clock by an hour, whereas normally the light changes by 3 minutes. And that 57-minute difference throws us all off for a solid week. So think about that, and the fact that when it's 3 minutes a day, we don't even notice, do we? Then all of a sudden we go, wow, it's light much later. It's 7:30 and there's still light out. When did that happen, right? So be gentle with your children when you're changing the schedule. Now, for the other part of it, suggestions for a summer schedule for children who don't live in a metropolitan area, that don't have huge summer camp programs or museums to go to or things like that. One of the big things that I want to encourage you to participate in, you just earlier saw a commercial for IBT, Institute for Behavior Training. If you haven't already taken some training in ABA, I want to really encourage you to do some of those trainings so that you understand the basic principles of how to have interventions with your child, right? It'll be very useful to you. It's really great parent training. You can hone in on the segments and the topics that are of interest to you, and absolutely, they're short. You can take notes. You can share them with other people. $7.50 for some of them. So very, very useful. You don't have to do a whole bunch of things that are of no interest to you or don't apply to you or that you already know. You can focus on the things that you do know about. Then what do you do with that knowledge, right? Well, Skills is a wonderful, wonderful tool that you can use online, and they're running a tremendous sale right now, but it's only to the end of May, that because it's a monthly fee to participate in Skills. And right now, if you sign up, it's 20% off, but it's not just 20% off for May, it's 20% off for however long you subscribe to it. So that's a huge, huge deal. And what you'll find in Skills are a bunch of activities. You'll take an assessment about where your child is right now. And then based on that assessment, you'll be given a pool of lessons, and you decide, okay, well, what I really want to work on, because I want my child's going into second grade, and I really need to work on shapes and handwriting. So we're going to take these 5 lessons and we're going to work on those. But we also need to work on adaptive skills. They have 8 different curricula areas. So there's academic, there is adaptive, which takes care of the kinds of things like brushing your teeth and toileting and buttoning and zipping and sneezing into your arm and not wiping things all preventing the spread of germs and being able to answer the phone call. Those are all adaptive skills. Then there's motor skills, and the motor is divided into gross motor, fine motor, visual motor, and oral motor. So if your child is having difficulty with their speaking but they can't be understood, there's lessons in there. If your child has a visual motor thing where you see their handwriting is really bad, or they're not able to ride a bicycle, they're having difficulty reading, it might be a visual motor thing. Might be, not necessarily. Fine motor are all the hand skills. Gross motor, the bigger coordination, kicking a ball, running, being able to swing a bat and hit a ball. although that involves a little bit of visual motor. There's also executive functions, which you can start with a baby on, but goes all the way up into, I benefit from the executive functions curriculum, and I'm older than dirt. And really great curriculum. And I know people say, oh, well, my child's so high functioning, it doesn't sound like this. Oh, yes, executive functions, great. There's a whole social skills curriculum, and part of that is social language, but the rest of it is social skills. You can be working on that. What am I forgetting here? All kinds of things. Cognition, being able to remember things, being able to think things through, seeing the cause and effect of things. I'm leaving important curriculum out. But anyway, 8 curricula areas, totally amazing, more than 6,000 lessons, and that's a great and ideal thing to work on, and you can apply them in different settings. And you can really make yourself a schedule and say, okay, so, and I would make a schedule, and then I would make a visual schedule for your child that says, depending on how old they are, right? But maybe, it says Monday, and here are the things that you're going to work on Monday. And, you're going to make it look friendlier to the child. Like, you're not going to say, we're working on executive functions today to the child. That has no meaning to them. But it might, maybe within executive functions, you're working on, I'm trying to think of, the executive function of being able to pack a bag. So maybe on Monday, you got a little symbol saying we're going to go to the beach, and at 9:30, your executive function skill that you're going to work on is packing the beach bag. Right? And so your child sees, pack the bag, but you know that it's an executive function skill because you're going to work on the fact that you're going to put the heaviest stuff in the bottom of the bag and the stuff that can't be crushed in the top of the bag. That's executive functions for a younger kid, right? Maybe for the older child, it's planning a trip to the beach that's going to happen on Thursday. So we have, a little planner there on Monday that says we're planning the trip for Thursday, and they have to get together all the things. Right now, my son's getting ready to have a birthday party, and I'm making him plan all the different things that we have to do before the birthday party to get it ready, and all the different, things. There's like 18 steps to make the cake that we're going to make, so that's all different ways that you can apply these lessons. But I would make a visual schedule and say, this maybe, at 3 o'clock on Monday, we have a picture of a bike because you're going to work on the gross motor skill of pedaling. And schedule it that way, making sure that you have stuff that's really, really fun. And the stuff that's hard, that maybe it's a little drier, that you make it as fun as you can, and that you reinforce. So key that whenever our kids are doing the right skills, that we reinforce. Build in going out into the community. I would never encourage you to stay inside for the summer and sit at a table and do nothing but lessons. That's a disservice to the world, because the world needs to see your child out and about and apply those skills out and about. Even if you live someplace in the middle of nowhere, there's things to do and go and see everywhere in the world, right? If you're an hour away from another community, then there's a nature walk that you can have close by, right? There are always things to do, and you want to figure out what's really reinforcing to your child, and what skills are on your priority list that you really need to bump up. But I really encourage you, check out IBT for training, and check out skills for those curriculum lessons, and then to make a schedule, and clue your children into what the schedule is. Anytime you see people, the 7 habits of highly effective people, one of them is having a planner. So don't feel like, oh, really? I got to get a planner. It's good for you. It's good for your child. Lifelong skill for people who aren't on the spectrum. Great. But fabulous for kids who are, and fabulous for those of us who have kids on the spectrum. So, and then write us and let us know what you end up doing and what you have success with. And of course, you'll get to the end of the summer and you'll say, well, okay, hey, you know, this is what worked. This is what I would have liked to have known beforehand. So this is what I'm going to change for next summer. And when you figure that out, write in and tell us so that we'll pass that on to somebody else who's coming along the pipe next year and says, I need to come up with something to do for my child, and I don't live near a big city and I don't have the option of a camp. I will tell you, I love Pinterest. If you go on Pinterest, let me know that you're on Pinterest, and I'll subscribe to your boards. I've got a bunch of boards there, and one of them is just autism with activities. So, and I don't have as much time as I would like to spend on it, but you can find out great information on Pinterest, and it's very reinforcing for those of us who are visual. All right, we're going to take a break and come back and answer some more of your questions. Stick with us.
Hi guys, welcome back. For the month of May, I thought it'd be really neat if we made our own bird feeders. What's cool about it is once it's done and it's hung in your front yard, backyard, balcony, or whatever outdoor area that you have, your kids will be able to observe the bird feeder and tap when they see birds coming over and feeding from it. Like, oh my gosh, oh, so exciting. Do you see that? Sorry, I got distracted. I'm just so excited about all the different birds I've been seeing now that I have a bird feeder hanging outside. Anywho, let's get started. The materials you'll be needing are 2.5 cups of birdseed, half a cup of boiling water, 2 packets of unflavored gelatin, a spatula, twine, scissors, wax paper, and cookie cutters. Alright, now that I got your materials, it's super easy. I have my boiling hot half cup of water, and I'm going to take my 2 packets of unflavored gelatin, and I'm going to pour them in and stir it. The reason I pour it in the water first all by itself is to make sure that the gelatin dilutes really well, and I can stir it up real nicely. Now that it's been all stirred together, I'm going to take this liquid and pour it into the birdseed, making sure to scrape up all the gelatin that we diluted. Now I'm just going to stir it all up. Okay, now that this is all mixed up, I'm going to take my wax paper and put it on my table, just so I don't make a mess. And then I'm going to take my cookie cutter and lay it down. I'm also going to take a piece of string and cut it, about 6 inches long. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill the cookie cutter halfway full with our birdseed mixture. And I'm going to take my string, fold it in half, I'm going to place it in the center. This way you can hang this up once it's done and dry. Now that it's full, I'm just going to pack it in. So now that this is all compacted, it's going to take about 6 hours for the gelatin to get completely hard. If you take it out too soon, the whole thing's going to fall apart. So let's wait a little bit, and I'll see you guys in a few moments. All right, it's been 6 hours now, so let's see if this little guy worked out. So I'm just going to pull him up and pop him out, okay? And here's my finished bird feeder. All you have to do now is hang it outside and wait for all the great things you're gonna see. Like, oh, I see another bird. This is so exciting. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the activity and keep me up to date with all the different birds that you and your child see outside your property. Until next time, craft on. Bye, guys.
Can you see me? Can you see me flying by your side?
Skills is an online program that provides assessment, curriculum, positive behavior support planning for challenging behavior, and progress tracking, and it does this all in one place. The skills assessment and curriculum addresses 8 areas of development, which even includes advanced higher level areas such as executive functions and cognition, which pretty much makes skills the only ABA-based set of curricula for teaching more complex skills, things like problem solving, planning, self-management, perspective taking, and even inferring and predicting others' private events. Skills is a 4-step system. Step 1 is to add the child to your account. Step 2 is to start assessment. The skills assessment is the only ABA-based assessment with psychometric research demonstrating the language subscale to have excellent reliability. Every area of human functioning and typical child development from infancy to adolescence was researched, making the skills assessment the most comprehensive of its kind in the world, and we're quite proud of that.
Skills is easy to use. Simply click Start Assessment and begin answering questions. Or simply type in a keyword, find specific activities to assess, and add activities to treatment. Step 3. Choose activities. Once you've completed the assessment, Skills selects from a pool of 4,000 activities categorized by age, level, and skill type to provide you with exactly those activities each child needs. Start by choosing a curriculum, then a lesson, and finally an activity. Click the information icon to view prerequisites, ages in which targets develop, examples, and IEP goals. Click the video icon to watch a short video. Once you've identified an activity you want to teach, adding activities to treatment is a snap. Step 4. Start treatment. Here you can access customizable activity lesson details, add your own customized targets and exemplars, and edit an activity status such as introducing or mastering it. You can even print handouts such as worksheets, tracking forms, visual aids, and other materials. Skills also offers multiple progress charts mapping curriculum progress, lesson progress, and cumulative number of activities and targets mastered over time. The Skills language curriculum is categorized by verbal behavior type so that users can identify progress for verbal operants, such as echoics, mans, tax, and interverbals.
Skills is one of the only programs that provides the ability to write behavior intervention plans, or BIPs, for challenging behavior.
With just a few clicks, the outline of the behavior intervention plan is written for you and ready to be printed and implemented.
You can learn more about Skills today and get started by visiting us at www.skillsforautism.com, or you can call us at 877-975-4559. Skills. Progress starts here.
Welcome back to Autism Live. And we had another question come in that, I love to talk about compliance, and this seems to have to do with compliance. So the question is, what do you do with a child when you place demands on them? They keep saying no. For example, trying to get ready to leave the house, and the child refuses to get dressed, to put on shoes, to put on a coat, to walk to the door, to get in the car seat, and physically fights to get away. Okay, and then I'm going to remind everybody, and we can ask these questions of our experts that come in a little bit later on in the week. But so I just want to remind everybody that I am not an expert in ABA and I'm not an expert in autism. But I can tell you as a mom the kinds of things that I have experienced personally with compliance. Because compliance, my favorite thing is to say, if you have compliance, it's the best of times. If you don't have compliance, it is officially, completely, thoroughly the worst of times, right? And so figuring it out, how on earth do we make it the best of times? And if you take all of these different examples that the person wrote in, they're all sort of different skills, but it seems as though they're centered around leaving. And you know what the experts tell us here, time in, time out, that all of our children engage in behavior over and over and over again because they're trying to communicate something, right? All behavior is communication. And our children don't necessarily have the words to say, I'm really upset because. I've certainly experienced this with my son lately, that he is verbal enough that he can now tell me what the issue is, and it's amazing to me the inaccuracy in which I have assumed what the problem was when it wasn't. Absolutely, I'm all about the parents' instincts. Yes, parents' instincts. But when our children are engaging in behavior, we shouldn't be allowed to assume, because I don't know about you, but I am wrong now that I can talk to him about it and say, just last night he was upset about something, and I was saying, use your words and tell me, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. And then finally so I'm in the time when he's saying, I don't want to talk about it, in my head, I'm like, well, he's upset about this or he's upset about that. And then when he finally talked about it, I was like, okay, really? I would never have guessed that that's what you were upset about. All right then. In any case, we do need to look at the behavior and go, what do I think is happening, and then not assume. So while our children cannot converse. So it would seem that there's something about leaving. But what is it? Is it that the child doesn't like where they're going? They don't like getting in the car seat. They don't like going out into the cold. You see what I mean? There's so many different aspects of it. And until we know what it is, we are going to have trouble figuring it out. But it's still a worthwhile thing to kind of, think, all right, look, here are my list of possibilities, right? And let's see if I can't be a detective and narrow those down. Because there's some reason why they want to stay or why they don't want to go. Is it because something really reinforcing is happening at home and it's not going to be as reinforcing where they're going? Or, maybe the car seat is uncomfortable. We just don't know. But there are a lot of different skills here that when the child refuses to get dressed, refuses to put on shoes, refuses to put on the coat, to walk to the door, to get in the car seat, and physically fights to get away. My question would be, can we take these skills apart and work on them one at a time and make them really reinforcing? So I know you got to go someplace today, right? And you think, well, that's great, Shannon, but that sounds like I'm going to get there 3 weeks from now. Right? We do our level best, right, to do as much as we can. So you want to make it as reinforcing to get out the door and to get out the door as quickly as possible. For each individual child, this is going to look completely different. But my example for my individual child is everything is a competition. And when he was a little, everything was a competition. So when I was trying to reinforce counting and teaching him how to count, we counted everything. And it ended up being something that was really beneficial in two ways. Because I would say to him, we need to go and we need to put on our shoes. I wonder if you can do it in 14 seconds. I'm going to count to 14. And that's literally what I would do. And so I would go 1, 2, and he would be hurrying, and there would be some offer of a reward or reinforcement if he could do it within 14 seconds. Now, in the beginning, it was really important that I did something that was really short, that was 3 seconds, and offer him a reinforcement for it. And I've said before, he hated to get out of the car to go up to the house, and especially as I was lugging groceries, and I had to park way far away from our condo, and it would be exhausting to me, and I'd be afraid that he was going to run in to the street. So I would say to him, let's have a race to see who can touch the front door first, and whoever touches the front door first gets a pickle. And he, at that time, loved pickles, so he would run down the sidewalk and run up the stairs, which was a very difficult task for him, and I could move really quickly with the groceries and get there, right? Same thing with getting out the door. We're going to have a race to see who can put their shoes on first. And if you can put your shoes on first, then, you get to have this toy in the car with you that's a really prized toy. Or, like I said, the number thing. Can you put your shoes on by the time I count to 14, right? And we have to ask ourselves, are they able to put their shoes on? Or is it something that we just need them to sit still and allow us to put the shoes on? Then it becomes a thing of, okay, we're going to see if mommy can get your shoes on within 14 seconds. That means you have to sit still and point your toes so that mommy can get your shoes on. If we can do it within 14 seconds, then we get to take, Fuzzy Lamb in the car with us. Yay, right? Whatever it is. Or, if you have one of the cars that plays a DVD, if mommy can get your shoes on within 14 seconds, then you can pick the movie that you watch in the car. We didn't have that. We still don't have that. My son informed me the other day that when we get a new car, that the single most important thing is that you have to be able to watch DVDs from a flip-down screen in the car. I don't think so. But some of you have that. In any case, making it some sort of fun thing. And for me, in my individual child, what works really well is when I work on fluency with the skill, because if it goes quicker, there's a sense of immediacy and excitement that he would rather do something quickly, and I'm teaching him how to do it quickly and efficiently. So if we take the time, the painstaking time to tie the shoes, it's not going to happen, right? But if I say, let's see how quick, I'm going to time, and I get my phone out, let's see how many seconds it takes you to tie your shoe, then he's, I'm ready. It's important that he does it well, right? He can't just do it halfway. But in any case, making it some kind of exciting. If I would start by making sure, is the child able to do each one of these skills, and is there a sensory issue with, putting on the coat, walking to the car? If it's really cold out and you're, I don't like to leave a warm house and go out into the cold, but we can make it fun, right? And we know we have to do it sometimes. But make sure that they can do each one of the skills. Make sure that you're not leaving a really preferred activity. So if you know that you have to get in the car in 10 minutes to go to a doctor's appointment, and it's going to be a battle because your child is watching their favorite video and it's their favorite moment in their favorite video, then yeah, you got an uphill battle, right? Set yourself up for success. Have them make sure that the video is over and that we're having to do something else that, not that it isn't reinforcing, but it's not the most reinforcing thing. That whatever we're going to is either on a par or is more reinforcing than the thing we're doing. Give them transition time and say, okay, it's 1 minute until we're going to get ready to go, right? So that it doesn't feel like it comes out of nowhere. All of those things are things that can help you. But the big key always to compliance is catch them doing something else good and reward them for it. So if you're having trouble getting your child to put their shoes on, find something else that they're doing or ask them to do something that they want to do and reward them. So they get into that mindset of, oh, they like it when I do this, and when they like something that I do, good things happen for me. That sets you up for a compliant child. All right, we're going to take a break, and a quick break, and then we're going to come back to look at some of your answers to the question of the day. So stick with us.
Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet is the...
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Grand-Pichet. Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet is a visionary in the field of autism, and now you get to ask her questions every Wednesday at 10 a.m. on Ask Dr. Doreen. Welcome back. I said that we were going to look at the question of the day, and my computer has decided to have a moment, like all of us. Every once in a while, my computer needs a moment, so let me see if I can bring it up here on my phone. Our question of the day was, what is your strongest social skill? That later on in the week, we're going to talk about what your children's social skills are, but I always like to start with us. What are our strong suits? Because then we're going to know and have a better idea of how we're going to be able to help our children. When my son was first diagnosed, we had a friend who worked with kids who were on the spectrum, and when I finally started to come out of denial and was saying to a friend, there's obviously something that is up with our child, and she said, well, she was very sweet about it. She said, what is it that you're thinking it is? What is it you're afraid? I said, you know what I'm really afraid of? I'm afraid it's autism. And, it's not working my phone either. Anyway, she said, well, what can you do about that? What are your alternatives? Is there somebody you can ask? Is there something you could do? And I said, I've got this really good friend. Her husband works with kids on the spectrum. I'm going to call her up and ask her if he can come and take a look at him. So we invited them over. They said they were going to come over for dinner that day. She said, what are you talking about? We were just at your house 6 months ago. I've seen some of the kids that he works with. I don't think there's any possibility that your child, this is you overreacting. Thank God I didn't listen to that, because that's what my head was saying as well. In any case, he came and he looked at my child, and I remember he said, well, of course, you need to take him and get him diagnosed, but I don't think it would be a waste of your time, is the way he put it. And, so then we started the long road of getting him diagnosed. But as he was leaving, I said to him, well, what exactly does that mean? What does autism mean, and what am I looking at? And he said, well, and it presents itself in different individuals in different ways. And he said, but a lot of times kids because I at that point I said, he's really shut down. My son is shut down. He's not responding when I say his name. And he said, well, we don't want to assume, but a lot of kids on the spectrum there's so much sensory going on, and we all filter it. We filter it out and go, okay, I'm not going to pay attention to that light that's flickering. I'm not going to pay attention to that noise that's happening outside the door. I'm not going to pay attention to this. I'm going to focus on what I'm doing right now. And we do that with varying degrees of success, right? Or failure. And because none of us are perfect at that, but we do filter out so much in a given day. And he said, for some kids on the autism spectrum, it's that they aren't able to filter it out. They're taking it all in, so their mind is so occupied with everything that they need to shut down. And I remember saying, oh my gosh, I think I might be on the autism spectrum then, because I am somebody who gets very easily sensory overloaded, and then I need quiet time. I need to sit in a room with nothing else going on. And he said to me, but see, this is why this is very exciting, because once you figure that out for yourself, then you'll know how to teach it to your child. And I said, you're making the assumption that I'm going to figure out how to help myself with this. And he said, yes, but of course you will. I'm still working on that. I'm still very much working on that. But I do think it's important that we know where our strengths and weaknesses lie so that we know how to approach that. I know I've got to be really... Anything that I ask my son to do to filter out sensory, I have to be able to do myself. I have to put it through, I have to take perspective here and think to myself, am I able to do that? Is that a realistic expectation of going to a huge event? We went to that gluten-free expo, and it was huge, and there were people everywhere, and smells, and loud noises, and bright lights. And afterwards, I needed some, serious decompress time, and I needed to be able to give that to him as well. So taking that perspective. Okay, so a couple of different comments about social skills. Somebody wrote in and said, I don't think I have any, but clearly you're on Facebook and you're talking to people, so clearly you have social skills. Somebody else says, that's a good question. I don't know if it's a skill or what it would be called, but I can talk to just about anyone. Like sitting in the waiting room or in line at a store, I strike up a conversation with a total stranger because I notice she also has a 31 bag, LOL. Is that a skill, or am I just one of those people? I don't know, but that was the one I shared too. I think it's a skill. I think it comes very much in hand. Bill Wong, who has been on the show before, who has disclosed that he is on the spectrum, and he's also an OT. He says, my strongest skill is being personable. If it's with my OT peers, my ability to relate to different types of characters is also a strong skill. Love it. And another person who wrote in already about their child, that's okay. My son's strongest skill is his memory skills. For example, he has the ability to remember locations, names, places, and numbers. The most astounding thing I have experienced with my son was his ability to remember the route from Columbia, South Carolina to Knoxville, Tennessee, simply by the exit numbers. He told us shockingly which exits to take, which lead us to his aunt's house. The most amazing thing, he had only made the trip once. He has never looked at, nor does he know how to use a map. He does this all the time to various locations, and each time we are astounded. We call him the human GPS. Love it. That's absolutely amazing. Great skill, right? Okay, we have more of these on another site, but we'll get into those later. It's time for us to show a new A word. We're following a little boy, Jack Riley, who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. He's been having his intensive early intervention in his home, ABA therapy, quality ABA therapy delivered by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And he has had a new baby sister come into the world. Jack's having a great deal of progress in terms of his social communication and his eye contact, but as you know, when we have to take his perspective a little bit. Somebody new is in the house and they're taking up a great deal of his attention, so his world has changed a little bit. We need to be cognizant of that. It doesn't mean that he gets out of doing the things he has to do, but it means that maybe we process it in a little different way and put demands on him in a little different way and help him to see how fabulous it is to be compliant. So take a look. This is the A word.
I know a cute little blue-eyed boy, and his name is Jack. Jack Riley. He got a big, warm, blue-eyed soul that makes your heart beat fast.
Who's that?
No, over there. Who's that? Good. And I totally think he's just aware of a lot of things now. People's names. How is the behavior team doing with the inflexibilities?
He's still a big control guy. He still wants it the way he wants it.
In sessions, he was very, he'd get very upset.
And he gets upset fast, like for reasons that didn't used to upset him. He gets upset fast, and then once he's upset, everything upsets him.
Were they really long?
But it was a good half hour, the whole tantrum, which is long for him.
Mm-hmm.
Really long.
Yeah.
And he would just get so upset.
Yeah, everyone tells us, it's not unexpected. He's 3 and blah, 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 but...
So we get it, we know it.
Still, it's harsh. Yeah, he's 3, but he's our 3-year-old.
Tell me a vehicle. Good job. Tell me another vehicle. Airplane is a vehicle. Yay. Okay, 2 more. Okay, tell me a food. Pancake is a food. Yeah. Tell me another food. Tell me another one. Cereal bar is a food. Yeah. I thought he said zebra. Hey, Duck ready? Yes. Good job. Tell me an animal.
What's that?
Tell me one more time. What's an animal?
Rhinoceros.
Rhinoceros. Oh, okay, it's an animal. Tell me another animal. I know. Tell me another one. Oh, here are your shoes. What animal is that? Froggy. Froggy is a what? No, frog is a arrow. Good. So tell me another animal. Rhinoceros is an animal. Rhinoceros is an animal, and tell me another one. More pancake. No, look at me. No, look at me. There you go. Thank you. Pancakes are not animals, silly.
There's a clue from it.
More pancake. Yeah, and I don't mind if he looks around to get clues, get hints. That's totally fine. Yes, I've been running sessions a little bit more like that lately, just because his behaviors have been really high. Just like if we're jumping on the bed or dancing, I'll stop for a minute and ask him like 3 or 4 questions, and then we'll just keep dancing or whatever we're doing. Let me probe. There's some stuff around that.
What are you going to be probing?
Actions. So I just want to see if he already knows it, then I won't even bother introducing it. Give me kissing. Oh, good. What are the kids doing? He's kissing. Oh, they're kissing. Can you show me kissing? Oh, good job. Give me cleaning. Okay, good. What's the girl doing? She's cleaning. She's cleaning. Good job. Watch her. Okay, one more. Can I have it? One more. Give me crying. What's the baby doing? She's baby. What's she doing? What's the baby doing? She's wah-wah. She's wah-wah? She's crying. She's crying. Oh, okay. Maybe we'll do crying. He's kissing. He's kissing. What about this one? What's she doing there? She's cooking. Oh, she's cooking. Okay. And what's this one? What's she doing? She's crying. Oh, okay. So basically, he knows all of them. All right, cool. All right. What are they doing? She's studying. They're what? They're cooking. Oh, they're cooking. Good job. What's her cooking? What's her cooking? Mom is cooking? What's her cooking? Lots of cooking? Oh, okay, cool. All right, all done. Thank you.
Welcome back. I love this particular episode because it really demonstrates how important it is that we work on a variety of skills at the same time, because and it demonstrates why things can go awry when we're not. Because And this is going to happen in every single situation with every child at some point, but you really have to be cognizant of it and fine-tune things, because here we have a little boy who wasn't speaking as much and wasn't speaking in full sentences, and now he's been reinforced and rewarded for speaking in sentences, but his articulation is not as crisp. So they said in the beginning that he's getting frustrated and he's getting very emotional sometimes, because here he's had a reasonable expectation that I'm going to talk to you. I've given up my old way of communicating, which was throwing myself on the floor, crying, throwing things, whatever. And you've taught me that speaking to you and using my words is going to be more effective and more efficient. And when it was just one word, it was getting it done. And now you've asked me to make it a full sentence, which is great. And I'm talking in the full sentence, and I get that I'm talking in a full sentence. Why aren't you understanding me, and why is my world not changing? Right? So there are a couple of times his vocabulary has improved so much that they're saying to him, name an animal. He's got the skill level that they can say name an animal, and he says rhinoceros, but you can't understand that he has said rhinoceros. So he's like, hello kids, I said rhinoceros. It reminds me of when my son was born, and a very dear friend came the day he was born, and she held him in her hands in his little burrito blanket and said, say oscillating sprinkler, right, to a 3-hour-old baby. But sometimes we have this expectation. He knows what a rhinoceros is. He can't say it, right? But there's the frustration of, why don't you understand me? And it's going to be different than your typically developing child, because the typically developing child, they said words and got reinforced and got reinforced and got reinforced. So it all shaped up sort of, beautifully. And now we're getting in there with this child and deliberately making it happen. And his articulation is pretty good, but when he adds a new word, it's going to be hard to understand what he's saying. And we don't want the frustration to build up. So there are times when she will question him and say, what are you saying? What are you saying? And, and then she'll say, oh yes, and reinforce him, even if she doesn't understand, because we don't want him to get to the point where he goes phooey on this communicating thing. Because if you're not going to get it, I'm going to go back to throwing the tantrum, which we're already seeing a little bit. And that's not unusual, right? They're not doing something wrong with him. I'm just saying, this is why you get like this with progress, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, because their skills get a little uneven, and then they're going to shape up the articulation. Okay, so I wrote down some notes here. Notice that in the beginning, they're reinforcing for him. They've got the camera and they're asking, who is this person? Who is this person? And they're yay when he gets them, because it's really key and important that we build in that people are reinforcing. We want to do this as often as possible, because our kids on the spectrum tend to, not all of them by any stretch of the imagination, but our kids on the spectrum tend to be drawn more to things than people. So we always want to make sure that we're reinforcing when there is an interest in people. And then they talk about the meltdown in the episode. And we have to have a reasonable expectation that let's say that you love candy and you eat candy on a regular basis, and you keep candy in your office drawer, and you keep candy, in your house, because when things go awry, you treat yourself to a piece of candy, and that's just the way you've done things. And you say to yourself, I'm not smoking, so it's okay that I'm having candy, right? And then, you discover that your blood sugar is high, and you have to let go of the candy. And you have to find another way to self-soothe. We've taken away your candy. We would expect, there would be a reasonable expectation that while you figured out what to put in place of candy, that you might be a little crabby. You might be a little irritable. You might be a little emotional. Things might be difficult for you. And we're constantly, with our kids on the spectrum, taking away whatever the security blanket is that, I know you've been doing it this way and it worked, but now we're going to have that stop working, and we're going to ask you to do something else. So there will be times when our kids are going to get emotional about it. It's hard. It's really, really hard. We're asking them to learn new things that are hard for them every day. How about if we take a little perspective on that? If, it's exciting, and when you get rewarded for learning an exciting thing every day, it can be very, very reinforcing. But that doesn't mean that it's not difficult, right? When people go and do difficult things, they sometimes have emotions about it. Let's not judge when our kids get emotional about it and feel like the world has come to an end. I think we need to sort of have an expectation about it and then help them to be able to deal with those feelings so that they're not having meltdowns about it. But time and time again, parents have described that, when their kids weren't able to speak and they weren't able to have receptive language, there was a certain coping level that happened. And then as we gave the child receptive language and we gave them the ability to express themselves, a certain amount of anxiety came into the picture because we're taking away that comfortable way of being. If we could all sit in a room and not be bothered by anybody and throw things if we didn't get our way and it worked, we might be willing to do that forever. We're not letting our kids do that. We're taking away what's comfortable. They are going to have some issues. I love they're asking him all these category questions and they're trying to make it as fun as possible. What's an animal? And at one point he says a pancake is an animal because that's what he's thinking about. This is a little boy who loves pancakes and he's getting hungry. And she doesn't make a big deal about it, but she says, oh, silly, a pancake is a food. A pancake is not an animal. And sometimes we do this too, right? I've shared before on the show that a big treat in our house is to go through the In-N-Out drive-through. And we can order stuff that's GFCF for my son. He loves their French fries, and we can get a protein-style burger that's without a bun, that's wrapped in lettuce. Absolutely loves it. And we were going through the drive-through the other day at In-N-Out, and it was time for us to get the food. And the girl was leaning out the window, and they always say, would you like any ketchup with those French fries? She was leaning out the window, and she said, would you like any haircut with that? She saw my haircut. And I was like, excuse me? Because didn't really quite get it in the moment. And then she took off her hat. She had very short hair, and she said, but I've been thinking of doing it even shorter. And then you pull up with this very short haircut. She said, I'm sorry, but do you want ketchup with your... I just thought it was hilarious. And she said, I have haircut on the brain. And Jack Riley has pancake on the brain. We all do this from time to time. I think but does the therapist, silly, a pancake is not a food. Pancake on the brain. And then you notice towards the end there, she's probing actions. It's not a teaching lesson, what she's doing there at the end. So it's a little more loosey-goosey. When we probe for things, you put things down and you put them in front of the child and ask, do you know what it is? And we don't correct them if they got it wrong, but we're just looking through to figure out what do we want to teach. And he's at a point where they've gone through all the labels, they've gone through all the categories, and now he's starting to do actions. And I love that he's responding with these full sentences. It breaks my heart, I guess, because I'm a mom, and that sometimes I understand Jack Riley even when they don't. There was an early episode when they were probing animals and they're showing him pictures, and they showed him a picture of a chicken, and he said, it's a shoo-shoo. And they said, a shoo-shoo? No, it's a chicken. He was saying rooster. The mom and me could tell he was saying rooster. Shoo-shoo is rooster in child. I don't know why they can't get that. And then at the end, she's showing him a picture and says, what is he doing? And he says, he's cooking. And she says, yes. And then he says a sentence, and she says, what? And he says the sentence again, and she's, oh, okay, because she doesn't want him to get frustrated. But he was asking a WH question. He's asking, what is he cooking? Love it. Love that the child is having that much progress. Absolutely. He says, what are they cooking? You'll see it. Watch tomorrow. That's what he's asking. What are they cooking? This is a beautiful moment. He's looking at a picture to identify an action and then asks a question. Beginnings of conversation. A WH question. These are really hard to come by in the early days. So this is signs of great, great hope. Okay. And sometimes we miss it because the artic isn't there, but they'll strengthen that up. And I mentioned skills before, really, it's not surprising to me that Jack Riley has articulation issues because he has eating issues. And guess what? They tend to go hand in hand because it's really hard to teach a 1-year-old to do tongue twisters. But what we do is give them food and they chew and it strengthens the oral muscles. And Jack Riley likes to eat things that are a consistency that's like applesauce. So it's not any big wonder. They're working on the food component with him. They're working on the articulation, but it's going to take a little while, and we got to be mindful of that. Okay, we are going to take a break, and we're going to come back and answer some more of your questions. So stick with us. Currently, in the United States, 1 in 88 children is affected by autism. 1 in 88 means something different when your child is the one. Recovery is possible. Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, host of Autism Live, an online show about autism broadcast by CARD, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm also the mother of a child with autism. My beautiful son, Jem. You know our old joke? Guess what?
Chicken butt.
Chicken butt. So we're going to take the chickens. But things weren't always so easy. I remember when Jem was first diagnosed with autism. I used to lay awake at night in bed and pray for someone or something that could help us to get our child back. My prayers were answered by Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet and the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD treats autism and other related disorders using the principles of ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, which is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. It is also recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics and the U.S. Surgeon General. About a year after we started treatment with CARD, we were able to see tremendous improvement, and we got our child back.
What grade are you in?
Second.
You are a smart cookie, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like school?
Yeah.
Do you have any good friends?
Yeah, Oscar.
Oscar is your best friend?
Yeah.
And my child is just one of thousands to benefit from CARD ABA therapy. Across the nation and around the world, children are making amazing progress and being given the keys to unlock their full potential.
We are extremely grateful for the amazing job CARD has done in helping our daughter. Our daughter today, just in 4 months, I think is a totally different child than when she started with CARD. I kind of see it as, it seems like her brain in a way was asleep, and now that we've gotten so many services, we've seen her wake up.
Did you have some glasses?
Recovery is possible if you take the right steps, if you're willing to put in all the hard work. And 7.5 years, yeah, it's a lot of work. It's worth every little bit, and CARD's been there with us every step of the way.
I have 2 children with autism. I can't imagine a day without CARD or the therapists. They've been so instrumental in helping us with our kids and shaping their lives and helping us help them.
Thank you, Christina Big Alex.
Thank you, Jackie and Mariana.
We've tried other things before ABA, but the most beneficial thing has been ABA services, and I'd be the first person to tell any newly diagnosed family that you have to contact an ABA provider, and if you're lucky enough to have CARD, you're very blessed.
Recovery from autism is absolutely a possibility. We've been recovering children for over 20 years. It's just a matter of identifying the child's medical needs, understanding the child's sensory issues, and then teaching the child all of the skills they need in order to function normally.
We know there's hope for autism. Autism is treatable, and recovery from autism is possible. Welcome back to Autism Live. It is Monday. It is May 20th, and this was a day that was specifically chosen by a group of bloggers to show some blog love and social networking. Oh gosh, I can't even put thoughts and words together because the story affects me so much. To show some support to a family that had a terrible tragedy last week. And of course, I referred to this at the top of the show. Mikaela Lynch, who was 9 years old and very profoundly affected by autism. She was nonverbal, and she was playing in her backyard and she eloped. Now, this is a term that we use sometimes on the show, and I like all jargon, you start to use it and you forget that a lot of people don't understand what the term means. And I used that term over the weekend explaining to somebody about what happened, and they said, eloped? Do you mean like, got engaged and left in the middle of the night? And I said, oh, good heavens, no. When we refer to elopement in a child with autism, we're referring to them running away without regard to what's safe or what the rules are. And almost all children in the world elope at some point. Anybody who's ever had a toddler and you're someplace, you can be in a park and the toddler just runs away from you. There's a very brief phase that most children go through where they just learn how to walk and they just run. And then in time, children learn how to be afraid of their surroundings, and they understand the rules, and the rules are that I stay with mom. And it's not unusual, it's terrifying, but it's not unusual for a parent of a neurotypical child to have their child walk away from them at some point. Parents that I greatly respect have had that happen where they've, even for a millisecond, that heartbeat where they don't know where their child is, whether they're at a mall or they're at a party or whatever, where they look around and they don't know where their child is. So I think that pretty much everyone who has a child should be able to relate to that moment and that gut-wrenching fear of, I don't know where my child is. And fortunately for most parents, their children cycle out of that phase. I don't think you ever get over the worry of it, but the children cycle out of that phase and they begin to understand rules, and you keep letting the leash go longer and longer. Well, especially for children on the autism spectrum that are profoundly affected, you can't let the leash go longer. So it becomes a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week, constant battle to make sure that you are keeping tabs on where your child is. And what's really disappointing to me is that, first of all, when something like this happens and a child goes missing, and it was Mother's Day and Mikaela went missing, there was an immediate sort of barrage from the press suggesting that, we're always looking for a villain in a piece, right? And suggesting that perhaps the parents hadn't been watching her in an appropriate way, which, my goodness, anybody who has that kind of judgment for somebody else, I urge people to be cautious about that, because that's the kind of stuff that, karma is a you-know-what. And no one can be hyper-vigilant 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and not for 9 years. And unfortunately, in one of those moments when she, they didn't have eyes on, she took off, and they spent days trying to find her. And ultimately, the story is tragic, that her body was found in a nearby creek. And we see this happen time and time and time again. Earlier I think it was earlier this year that a child was lost from a family and died in a creek, and then their second child, the same thing happened. It's shocking and it's unbelievable. And I know that people go, really, why don't you realize then and keep track of your children? And those of us who have kids on the spectrum who have ever eloped know that that's a fool's paradise to think that you can, because there is no human being who can be vigilant 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's not an excuse, right? It's a reality. Excuse me. And it means that we all have a responsibility to make sure that those children are kept safe. And it's not just the parent. We can't pin this on one parent or one set of parents and have an expectation that they're going to suddenly be able to be superhuman and stay awake. It just isn't realistic. So in any case, there were a lot of autism bloggers out there who were really offended. I think most of us were, by some of the press that came out immediately. And on top of the fact that this family is suffering a huge loss, and on top of the fact that what happens when a child elopes with autism, everybody thinks, oh, Amber Alert, we're going to put it out there and utilize all of those great billboards that we have everywhere that are electronic to let people know there's a child who's missing and in danger. Except that there's a very specific criteria for an Amber Alert, and children with autism do not qualify. I know. The first time I heard that, I went, what are you talking about? We have a resource and we can only use it and this is the case, that as the law currently stands in the United States, an Amber Alert can only be put into full force and all those people mobilized if, in fact, they believe that there's been foul play and the child has been abducted. There is no legislation on the books to use that technology when a child has a disorder such as autism and is a danger to themselves. Shocking as it is, resources go untapped. So at some point, those parents, it would have been explained to them, look, your child doesn't qualify. So we have resources, but we're not going to use them to find your child because those are saved for abduction cases. Particularly heart-wrenching. And then on top of that, to be accused publicly of being somebody who wasn't taking good care of their child from somebody who doesn't understand what that means. And then, the worst of all, to find out that your child is gone. I cannot even imagine. My head does not want to go there. Let's be honest about that. So we've written a blog, and many other people have written a blog, and we were asked today to show love and support for this family. And so we ask all of you, you can share our blog, you can go on to our blog site and share the blog, or you can write your own blog, or you can just put something in your Facebook status and say, remembering Mikaela Lynch and her family today. But I do think it's important, and I urge all of you that if you have a child who has elopement issues, that first and foremost you understand that this is not something that you should be dealing with by yourself. That's very risky. And that it isn't something that has to go on forever. There is help and support. We know, studies have shown time and time again, that we can help these children if we use the right interventions. It's painstaking, and things have to be put into place that help the child to be safe while they're working on preventing the child from eloping. Because, there's two sides to this, right? There's the reason why the child is eloping and fixing that, but there's also the fact that in the meantime they are eloping, and we have to be as prepared and diligent as we possibly can. And that cannot mean just counting on a parent to be vigilant. It just isn't possible. It doesn't work. We see that. So I want you to know, if you're out there and your child is eloping, ask for help. One of the places that we recommend on a regular basis, Autism Care and Treatment Today, they give grants on a regular basis to families for the things that they need. They also have an SOS grant that they give that you don't have to wait until they're in an open grant phase. You can fill out the paperwork, and especially for an instance where the child is at risk, it's a safety risk, and for elopement, that's absolutely what it is. Think no further than Mikaela. And Mikaela is by no means the only child that this has happened to. This happens far, far too often. So please spread the word and get the word that there is help, and if you need help, you can apply for a grant. You can call your local Autism Society of America and see if they recommend somebody locally who can help you to get the right ABA for your child, so that they're not eloping anymore. And I also encourage you to get a TACA mentor to help you, with implementing some strategies in the house to make sure that your house is as reasonably safe as possible. I know Nancy Allspaw Jackson, who comes in with me on Wednesday, has talked about the one time that her son got out and was running towards the freeway. And I have shared before on the show the one time we had so many locks on our door, and they were so high up that it looked like Fort Knox, right? And we had locks and alarms on windows because it was my greatest fear. And my son was somebody who would run. So when I took him someplace where I couldn't run as fast as he could, we had him on one of those little doggy leashes that looks like a doggy backpack, and it has a little leash on it for a really long time. We went to Disneyland, we had the leash. I'm just keeping it real here. And at home it was like Fort Knox, but I will never forget the day that he managed to get up on the chair and take off the lock and was halfway down to the street before I realized it, right? And luckily, there but for the grace of God go I in terms of Mikaela's parents, because luckily, like something in my head, like some little alarm went, something's wrong. And I got there before he had gotten to the street. So I have no judgments at all on a family that's dealing with elopement. It's hard. And we got help and support so that my child wouldn't just run away. Do I still to this day have concerns? Yeah, we don't have doors barricaded, but we did for a lot of years. We have a dog now that I think makes me feel a little bit better, but I am still hyper vigilant and hyper aware of the fact that, this is a real issue for all of us. So I encourage you, spread the word and ask for help if you need it. And if you know somebody who needs help, tell them. This should not be something that a family just goes, well, this is our lot in life. That is a recipe for disaster. But if you don't know, then you don't ask, right? So tell everyone that you know, and let's see if we can't prevent this terrible tragedy to happening to another child and to another family. But please support this family. I can't even imagine what they're going through, and I'm sure neither can you. Check out our blog, and while you're there, and if you share it on Facebook, make sure, mentioned earlier, you can sign up for our newsletter so that you find out about important information that we have on the newsletter. We're going to take a break and come back with more of your questions after this.
Hi, I'm Bryce Myler, and I'm the Contracts Director for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I've been here for about 5 years. CARD has several employees with many years of insurance experience, dealing with insurance, dealing with pre-authorizations, dealing with discovering whether there's coverage or not. So we have more experience than any ABA provider that I've ever come across. So for a prospective client, somebody that may be interested in, ABA therapy and what CARD has to offer, we have a special 800 number, and you call that number. They will talk to you about what we have to offer, how ABA works. He'll ask you for the front and back of your ID card, and then we check to see if you do or do not have coverage. If you have coverage for ABA therapy, we try to do whatever we can to set it up where we can bill for you and you don't have to fight with the insurance company every month to get your claims paid. For California residents, we recently did a series of insurance trainings all over the state, and you can click on the link below to watch pretty much the full presentation. It has a lot of information, how you can get your insurance company to comply with what they're supposed to do, understanding the networks, and many other valuable pieces of information.
Welcome back. We had a question that came in over the weekend from someone saying, our son is autistic and loves the outdoors, jumping and playing in water. What would you say would be the best to help him progress and be able to be in school? There are not a lot of teachers that will help him, but what do we look for in a school? Well, and again, I always have to do the disclaimer that I'm not one of the board certified behavior analysts, and we can ask one of them later on in the week. But as a parent, there are a lot of questions that come to mind in terms of, how old is your child and what is their skill ability and what is their current placement in a school, and do they, are they able to part of the time be in a included class, or are they all the time in an included class? How well are they doing academically? So I guess it really depends on what the child's skill level is. But basic things to look for in a school, all of our kids, if they have autism, should have an IEP, an individualized education plan or program. And we want to make sure that not only, it's a legal document, right, that has guidelines with how the child is supposed to be taught, what the priorities are supposed to be, what the behavioral interventions are supposed to be if there's a BIP attached to it. It's supposed to be a plan. And it's really important that we get the plan right, but then more important and more to the point, the plan needs to be followed. And it needs to be followed by somebody who is willing to follow an individualized education plan. Now, I'm a former teacher and I love teachers. I think teachers are are amazing. I think they're angels on this earth. People who would sign up to work as hard as they do in a field that, you know, sometimes is very reinforcing, but a lot of times is not. And it's really, really difficult being a teacher. And the pay, let's face it, right? You know, anybody who's willing to sign up for that level of pay to deal with as many issues and challenges, they're pretty remarkable people on the whole. Yes, occasionally you run into somebody who's just done. They've had enough and they've shut down. Or you run into somebody who signed up to be a teacher because they thought it would be great to have summers off. I think it's the great extreme that you find those people, because a lot of times those people don't last. They shouldn't last. But so my disclaimer out the gate is that most teachers are very well intentioned. In today's economy, they don't get the support that they should. I can guarantee you that. And they don't get the educational support for the kinds of things that are really going to be beneficial to them. So the first thing I would say is look for the school who provides training for their teachers. Look for the school or the teacher who is interested in doing things in a different way. If you hear from a teacher phrases like, well, this is the way I do it and I've been doing it this way for, like, don't even stick around for the rest of the conversation. That's not going to be the teacher who is going to individualize things for your child. They're going to say, this is how my class works. This is the way I've been doing it. And that is the way we will continue to do it. It's that I'm going to make sure all the square pegs fit in the round holes. Great. Just not my child. Probably not your child. That's my opinion on things. But the teacher who says, I'm just curious, what works at home? That's the teacher you want to be with. Or what are they doing? You know, are you doing therapy at home? What's working for them? What kinds of things are you working from at home? A teacher who wants to work with give and take. A teacher that you can ask a question and not be shut down. And a teacher who wants to ask you questions. On a 50-50, if I ask a teacher a question and they don't ask me a question back, I get wary, right? Because learning springs directly from asking questions. And I want somebody teaching my child who is a lifelong learner and who's passionate about learning. Otherwise, you know, what do we have? So that's going to be really important as you look at a school. I would also be asking about the OT that you have at your school, because it really sounds like your child needs to be on a sensory diet. There's a certain amount of movement, gross motor movement, that they need to have within the day, or they're not going to find it reinforcing enough. This is where that individualized plan is going to come into place. So we see kids who are in preschool that there's a certain amount of the day that they're sitting at a desk, right? Or sitting at a table in a chair, and they're doing some sort of activity, and it may only be for a minute, and then they get up and they stretch and they do whatever, right? Different things for different kids. But we don't want to have an expectation that this child who loves running and jumping and being outdoors is suddenly going to be able to spend an hour sitting in a chair. That's an unrealistic expectation. So in the IEP, usually they have a goal about how long the child can sit and attend. Early on, I want to say it might have been in the IEP that they were trying to get approved for my son's kindergarten year. They wanted him to be able to sit and attend for 20 minutes. And I remember looking at that and going, what? For, 20 minutes, they want him to be able to sit and attend and take no prompt. That's the other thing, is that, obviously children, there's the hope that at some point in kindergarten they can sit and attend to something for 20 minutes, but with prompting. And they were looking for it without prompting. And I remember going, well, let's find some standards here about what's appropriate. And 20 minutes with no prompting is not appropriate for any child in kindergarten. That's a really long time to need absolutely no prompting whatsoever. So check to make sure that it's realistic, the expectations that they're having, and start slow. If you're already doing pre-K, you're doing preschool right now, I would encourage the staff to see how long can your child sit there before they have to go and run, and then how long do they have to run before they can come back and sit. Take sort of a baseline on that about like what's doable, and then work within those parameters to stretch that child like pizza dough. So if right now your child can sit in a chair, and if it's a really reinforcing activity and they can do a minute, that they'll look at a puzzle that has their favorite character, or they'll play with beads for a minute, or they'll look at a picture in a book for a minute. Great, that's your baseline. So then you go, great, we looked at the book, we looked for a minute, we don't get to melt down and say, and now we're going to go do jumping jacks and we're going to run around for a minute, and then, okay, we're done with that, we're going to come back and do another minute, right? Well, eventually you can start turning shaving a little bit at a time. Maybe you do a minute and a half. Let's see, can we maintain that we're looking at something very reinforcing for a minute and a half, and then we're going to go and exercise for 50 seconds instead of a minute. And then we're going to come back and we're going to do another minute and a half, making sure that it's in small enough increments that the child is being successful. We're rewarding them with that movement, right? But we keep making the time longer and longer that they have to go, but by teeny, teeny, tiny increments. We're not rushing them until eventually, they can sit for a period of time and attend. And that might take a year. It might take 5 years, because you're constantly going to be pushing the envelope. They do this with neurotypical kids. In kindergarten, part of the reason why they move and do centers is because they did research, and it gives the children a better grasp of the transitions. It helps them because they actually are moving to another table, and it gives them a chance to stretch out and do whatever. And you'll see a good kindergarten teacher, as the kids are moving, they'll be asking them to do stuff and get them moving just a little bit as they go to the next center. And by the time, my son's in 4th grade, they don't do centers anymore. The expectation is the kids are going to sit there until recess time, right? They couldn't have gotten there overnight. Every year they build towards it a little bit more. So I definitely think that's the direction you want to work. The water is so reinforcing to so many of our kids. And we have to be careful and mindful and take their perspective, right? Really hard to be able to deal with water at school. A lot of classrooms don't have a sink, or if they do have a sink, having a child go over and play in water for a couple of minutes can be very disruptive to the rest of the kids in the class. If there's an aide and the aide can take them to the nurse's office and have them play in the water for a second, making sure that it doesn't go on very long at all, but that they get that in, because what we don't want to have is a child who's eloping to get to water. If we try to cold turkey our obsessions that our kids have and say, no, you're just not going to have that for this 8-hour stretch, we're setting up circumstances in which children do elope. So got to be very mindful of that. But also being mindful of the Temple Grandin's wise words about, she wanted to spin that plate on her bed, and her mom would let her spin it for a set amount of time every day, and then that was it. So we build into the day at home before we go to school that, during lunch you got a break where you can go play for 3 minutes in water. And we gradually build towards that. So that's kind of where I'm thinking, but very interesting to hear from you and about what works and what doesn't work. But all of our kids need movement, and we can very slowly work up to having them attend. Okay, we have to take a break, and then we are going to come back and look at some more of your answers on Facebook, so stick with us.
When you find out you're having a boy, you always think like, oh, he's going to play football, he's going to do this and that. And then when he's diagnosed, all those things get washed away.
It's like that piece that's always in the back of your mind, where is he? What is he doing? Is he safe?
We really didn't know what we were dealing with. I wish that they could have directed me a little bit more and provided me some information.
I was a young mom. I didn't know what it was like to raise a boy, despite a boy with autism.
Hundreds of thousands of families are not getting the help they need for their children with autism all around the country. ACT Today is determined to bridge the gap. These families really have to go through a lot to get a grant. The application process isn't easy. The records, the diagnosis proof, they're really battling for their kids. So when we can give them a grant, it is so wonderful to see that they succeed in getting that help for their children. Our founder, Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet, is an amazing woman, and she is one of the world's foremost authority on behavior of children with autism. She's extremely knowledgeable, and she oversees every single grant we give. She is part of that process. People may think of autism care and treatment as simply schooling or therapy, but we provide important safety supports, things like fencing, for example. The whole family's living in fear of that child running out into traffic. I recently delivered an iPad to a little boy with some of the apps that are out there for children with autism. Miracles happen.
I got the iPad from ACT.
From ACT,
What did it say? Can you repeat that, Dustin?
I got the iPad from ACT.
We have helped so many military families, and when I think of these brave families that are fighting two battles, one to protect our country and one for the right treatment and care for their children, it breaks my heart, and I think we have to do more as a nation to help them.
There's not a day that doesn't go by that we don't think about it. Some people say, oh, he's normal. You don't see the battles that I see every single day. My husband does have to deploy, and when they get on that bus, that might be the last time that my kids ever see them.
So I called, and then they informed me that he had received the grant, which was like a blessing from above. I was just like speechless. I just started to cry because, without it, we would have been lost.
The ACT grant was a total miracle. Without that, we wouldn't be able to receive the service dog. So we're so appreciative of what they've done for us as a family.
Recently, ACT Today funded a program for military children with autism in San Diego, the Inclusion Films program, which is run by Joey Travolta, and teaches kids on the autism spectrum literal filmmaking skills. They learn how to make a movie.
Are we ready? There you go, got it. Okay. Everything that goes into the process of making a film goes into everyday life. So they're learning life skills, they're learning to collaborate.
It was really nice to know how much they were enjoying this camp, and they're with people who are supporting them and are making them feel great about themselves and their differences and their similarities. And I get two kids that are working together and apart and together and apart, so it's an interrelationship as well as a camp and a learning experience.
It's so fulfilling when I get letters. One stands out for me, a boy who was 14 with Asperger's, and we gave him a grant to go to a drama camp. He wrote to us and said, "Dear ACT Today, thank you for letting me belong for the first time in my life." These kids are remarkable. We underestimate them. They're so knowledgeable, they're so capable, and we can change the life of a family, which means changing the life of a community.
Welcome back to Autism Live. And you just saw some information that included Inclusion Films, Joey Travolta there. And last year, for the first time, they did a summer camp in San Diego, and it was for military families and their siblings, for children who are military family children. And they're doing it again this year. And we're very excited that this Wednesday, one of the sponsors for it is Cox Communication. We're going to have somebody from Cox Communication here with us on Wednesday. I want to put a message out there to anybody who is in the San Diego area or knows anybody who has a military family in the San Diego area that they still have some openings in the camp, and it is free for the sibling and for the child on the spectrum. Last year, all of Joey Travolta's inclusion camp things, I cannot wait until my son can do this. I am absolutely just like holding my breath until my son can do it. And I want to encourage you, he does them all over the country, and he even does some in Canada. So go to inclusionfilms.com and check out and see where they're going to be this summer. And they have different age ranges, so definitely check it out. And there are two different types of camp. There's the ones for younger kids, and then there is a very intensive, it isn't a camp, I think it's more of a school for the older kids that helps them to be job ready. I know we're all used to saying there are no services for kids who are older, but the truth is that there are some, and some of them are phenomenal, and Joey Travolta's Inclusion Films is one of them. So encourage you to check that out. see if that's something that's right for you and for your family. But if, again, there are some spots in the inclusion film camp this summer that Act Today is sponsoring along with Cox Communication and Inclusion Films, and it gives those kids an opportunity. The kids who did it last year, it was life-changing. And it was life-changing for the siblings because they had such a wonderful opportunity and they learned real skills, and it's very social and very exciting. They ended up having a red carpet. So talk about your rewards. They got interviewed on the red carpet about the films that they made. You gotta love it, right? So in any case, check it out because that is coming up. Okay, now our question today, we asked you guys, what is your strongest skill socially? And of course, I know it's hard. Sometimes as parents, we automatically assume, okay, well, no, I need to talk about my child's social skill. I actually was meaning, what is your strongest social skill? But it's okay that many of you wrote in about your children. That's totally okay. We're going to do that again later on in the week. But somebody wrote in and said, my son is getting better with sign language. After 3 years of trying to teach him, he is teaching me sign language. He can talk in several sentences now using signs. This is an amazing thing. And of course, I don't know whether this young man is also vocal, but learning sign language is a great thing. I know we were doing a little bit of sign with my son when he was little, and we found it fascinating. As he gained speech, it fell off the table and we just didn't have time. It was another skill and we were prioritizing in terms of what he had to learn. But it's a skill. I just got a series of videos about sign language because our whole family is going to try to learn sign language. I think it's a fascinating skill, and like learning any other language, like learning Chinese, these are things that, as long as it's reinforcing and we make sure that it's reinforcing to our kids, really, really beneficial. Why not be able to speak in different languages and be able to communicate with more people in more circumstances? I have had the opportunity at several points in my life to be with members of our deaf community, and I, in particular, because theater was my background, had the opportunity to work with individuals in the theater who were deaf, and what a great place that was to learn sign language, because there you are sitting in a theater and it's all about being quiet, right? Whether it's rehearsal and one person is rehearsing and other people are watching, or it's watching a show, and being able to converse in a very quiet way, unobtrusive way, it's a gift, and it's a beautiful, it's like a dance. It's an absolutely beautiful thing. So I love the fact that you've been teaching him and now he's teaching you. It's like all things with our kids, right? I had that moment with Jem the other day where I was describing his height to people and saying, he's up to my shoulder now. He's going to be 10 in 2 weeks. And I'm a tall woman, and I would say he's up to my shoulder, and now he's up to my nose. And I just had this moment of realizing, okay, so next year we're going to stand and make eye contact, eye to eye. He's not having to tilt his head back anymore. It used to be he would look up at me and have to look this way, and now he's just slightly tilting his head or looking up with his eyes. And very quickly, it's going to be me looking up at him. And so our kids, they physically change and they mentally change. And what an awesome thing to be in a circumstance to be taught by our children. My son's teaching me computer. Right. Also, a couple of things that I want to mention to you. There's an open house coming up, and it's this Wednesday at the new assessment center here in Los Angeles for CARD. The assessment center used to be a part of the headquarters, and now they have their own center. And so that will be on Wednesday. And if that's something that you want to go to, make sure that you visit their Facebook site and RSVP for it, so that they make sure that they have enough materials and there's food. There are several speakers. You have the opportunity to hear Dr. Doreen Granpeche speak. Evelyn Kung will be there speaking. She's the head of the clinical for all of the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And you will also, Evelyn Garcia, who is the head of the assessment center, the director of the assessment center, will also be speaking. So a really amazing event if you're in the Los Angeles area on Wednesday. You can get a tour of the assessment center, but it isn't just a tour. They're really, it's a fairly small event, and they're planning on taking time with each family to talk about what do you need, and here's how we would provide that. So that starts at 5:30 on Wednesday, and then there is a 6 o'clock presentation, but you really get the opportunity to ask questions and meet people one-on-one. So that is on Wednesday of this week in the Los Angeles area. Also reminding you of that special that we told you about earlier on Skills. Skills is a monthly subscription fee. I don't even know what it is currently, but right now there is a sale that it's 20% off, and it's not just 20% off for this month, but 20% off for the lifetime that you have the subscription. So if you're thinking about getting Skills, I would encourage you to sign up for it this month, not next, because I know they did this for April and they extended it to May, and I know for a fact that they're not going to extend it to June. So sign up now. You're going to save money. And I love it. I use it all the time. Okay. Anyway, interesting. I think I just got a personal message. I'm not quite that I completely understand it, but somebody who likes my hair. In any case. All right, we have a lot that we're covering this week, and I want to make sure that you know that tomorrow in the first hour at the half, we will have the family that we featured on Mission Possible earlier, 2 children on the spectrum, and both of them doing remarkably well. So that family, they will be with us tomorrow via Skype because they're on the East Coast. And then we have Evelyn Gould, who is a BCBA, who will be joining us tomorrow, and we've got a bunch of questions to be asking Evelyn and asking for her help and support. On Wednesday, Dr. Doreen Grampachet will be here, and she will be answering your questions during the segment that we like to call Ask Dr. Doreen. And then a little bit later on Wednesday, Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson will be joining me, and we will do our segment called Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. We have such a cavalcade of people that are going to be with us on that day that it's mind-blowing, but one of them that will be here will be from Cox Communication. We have a family that the young man has started a league for a baseball league. We're out of time, so we won't go through all that. Emily's going to show you some of the ways you can get in touch with us, but trust me, Wednesday's a big day. I want to encourage you to be in touch with us, to tell us the kinds of things that you're wanting more information about. Tell us what's frustrating you, what's kicking your can, what you wish somebody were doing differently, because those are the kinds of things that we want to be covering here on the show. Help you to hook you up with information that's important to you. I don't want to assume autism has changed a lot in the time since my son was diagnosed, and I count on you guys to tell me what is essential to you right now. Don't expect me to be a mind reader. I gave that up to be an autism mom, right? Isn't that what we all did? But I want you to know more than anything else that we're here for you. So please be in touch with us. We will be back tomorrow. Until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.